It is 10 o'clock, and so we will call the October 12th meeting of the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority to order here. I'd like to welcome the folks that have shown up and those folks that may be online. And also welcome virtually our two consultants, Dan Cooper and Mike Mooney. Welcome to the meeting, guys.
Thank you.
At the end of our meeting, we will welcome public comment. We do have a couple that have been submitted online and have those in our packets and will be put onto our public comment system online. And so with that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move. Second.
Support. We have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have a motion for approval of the minutes of June 7th.
Support.
Support. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, up next under old business, an update from Ray Howd on the third-party utilities.
Thank you, Chairman. The staff has continued to negotiate with PFN on third-party utility space within the tunnel. They're a fiber optic company. We're very close. There is one issue that we are still looking into. PFN would be investing quite a bit, substantial amount of investment to install cable within the tunnel. And we've been discussing a clause in the agreement that the authority would not grant to any other third-party utility the right to place fiber optic cable in the tunnel until there was no available capacity. I've been meeting with the high-speed internet office with DLEG. I've been in contact with the Mackinac Bridge Authority, and the hope is that members of the high-speed internet office would be available to give a presentation to the authority if and when the time comes that we're prepared to make a recommendation that clause in the agreement remain.
So the point here, Ray, is that PFN is obviously doing a significant outlay, and their hope is that they would be able to recoup that investment before any other fiber optic was approved to be installed in the tunnel when it was built. Is that kind of the
That is
concept
correct,
that they're
Chairman.
pushing for?
Yes,
So we don't have any other fiber optics right now that are in
that's
play.
correct. No other interest.
And it's kind of hard for me to say, I'm sure any of us, to understand what a significant investment is. Is it something that the departmental staff would be able to educate us on investment levels, and are they going to know those type of numbers for us?
I don't know that. I've had a preliminary meeting with the high-speed internet office, and I expect that we'll have several more.
Yeah.
And that will certainly be one of the areas that I'll discuss.
So, on these utilities at times, I'm sure we've all gotten the phone call from another natural gas company that says, we see you have Consumers Energy, for example, or DTE, but we can supply you with cheaper gas. And I would assume that is happening through the same transmission structure that Consumers Energy installed originally and invested in. Maybe another question for the high-speed internet office would be, is it possible in the internet space that other providers can or would use PFN's system to sell through? I don't know that. I'm wondering how all that would work, or is PFN just protecting to say that they want to recoup their investment and no one would be able to use it, but no one else can build and invest themselves in the tunnel? So I don't know these things. So I think your idea, Ray, of maybe having the staff come in and give us a short presentation at a upcoming meeting, since this is ongoing, would be worth the time.
I agree. And I would, for clarification, the language that we've been negotiating would require that PFN essentially lease to any and all persons or entities that wanted to lease a fiber optic line.
Okay.
I don't know whether there's ever an issue here, but what about someone needing a secure line?
I'm
mean,
sorry, I'm not up to speed.
The feds may want to install something that is on its own. I'd hate to, say PFN's the only people that can have a cable in there if they couldn't really serve the need of the person wanting the cable.
That makes sense. Yeah, Sam, we don't have that capability. Sorry, you're out of luck. Yeah.
And I guess I want to say, as just one member, I'm thrilled that PFN is doing, taking the steps that they are taking right now, because this was obviously a secondary goal of building the tunnel, to have greater access of high-speed internet to the folks in areas that may not have it right now. There are certainly businesses that I have heard of in the UP that could expand and grow, but they're limited by the capacity that they have in their fiber optic network up there. And so I want to try to work forward as much as we can to encourage that type of expansion. But I also understand their concerns about investing and then just suddenly not being able to recoup their investment. Paul, you have anything?
Yeah, there are a couple thoughts. One is have an appreciation for just first this company is envisioning. Oh, sorry. I don't have a good understanding of just how much of the available capacity PFN would be taking as a result of their proposed installation of fiber optic cable. And it would be a helpful thing to know how much capacity they are taking and how much would remain as potentially available capacity down the road. I understand their point about recoupment of investment, but if we are essentially acknowledging them as being the sole carrier that would have the capability of transmitting through that tunnel, then it may be appropriate to attach some conditions in, as you were saying, the conditions upon which they would lease or allow other fiber optic cable companies to use a portion of what they had installed. And I think typically under essential facilities doctrine, a corresponding obligation comes with that for them to lease under, and it's considered a term of art for these purposes, FRAND, or fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory basis. Now, what that means in practice is sometimes a subject of debate, but if we were going to go forward with the approval of this at some point, I would want to know those things. First, the amount of cable capacity or fiber optic network capacity that they would be undertaking and how much would remain available. And then secondly, whether the terms of the arrangement would contemplate that any alternative fiber optic network companies be able to lease from them at FRAND terms.
Yes, and I would add that in our draft so far, and really from the beginning, there is a provision that PFN will provide to third parties access to fiber optic cables within its facilities on a non-discriminatory basis.
So to then close this out, Ray, I think that coordinating with the high-speed internet division or whatever of the state to have them come in and potentially they can answer some of these questions, but you can share them with them ahead of time, and we could get a little better educated on this because this is important. All right. Is that all you have, Ray?
Yes.
All right. Up next, welcome Dr. Mooney. Updates on the project specifications.
Good morning, Chairman Nystrom, members England, Novak. Enbridge has requested 3 revisions to the jointly developed project specifications. These are summarized in the memo from their designer of record, Harrop, which is in your member packet. The MSCA joint specifications team, comprised of myself, Ryan Mitchell, Rick Liptak from MDOT, Ehab Darwish from Alfred Benish and Company, and Mahmoud Khwaja from CDM Smith, have been briefed on these revisions, and in short, we concur that these revisions are acceptable. I'd like to just describe briefly those 3 requested revisions, what they entail, and the rationale behind our recommendation or support for these revisions. And just to, as a refresher, the jointly developed project specifications are the 9 sections of project specifications that govern essentially the technical requirements of the tunnel infrastructure, as well as the construction specifications, so that it's built in accordance with standard practice and those technical requirements. And it's really just focused on the tunnel infrastructure and the portal and shaft at the south and north shore, not the pipeline, not the mechanical, electrical infrastructure that goes in there. So the 3 requests, the first one is to add type 1L cement into the specifications. It wasn't in the specifications before, and the request is to add that in. And this is acceptable. This is really an industry trend now. The manufacturers of Portland cement in the Great Lakes region began transitioning to, in January of this year, from normal type 1 Portland cement to exclusively producing type 1L limestone blended Portland cement to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions at cement production facilities. And so the result is that type 1 Portland cement will no longer be produced domestically, and everyone is shifting to type 1L limestone blended Portland cement. MDOT as an entity has accepted type 1L Portland cement on its projects and has issued special provision for type 1L Portland cement and a transition guidance. So this is a trend nationally, but also clearly in MDOT. And I referenced in my report, my letter report, those MDOT documents that have the special provision, but also the transition guidance. So based on that, that was sort of an easy acceptance of that recommendation. The second request was to allow truck mixed concrete for use in cast in place concrete structures. So the current specification language requires ready mix concrete to be either central mixed or shrink mixed. Shrink mixed means partially centrally mixed and then mixed in trucks. Truck mixed concrete is commonly used for cast in place construction on MDOT projects and is therefore deemed acceptable here. The motivation behind this is contractor input to the RFP process and the desire to make it more economical to do. There's no, Rick Liptak, I should mention, joined the specs team in to take Matt Shanawith's place, who left MDOT. And Rick has a lot of experience with these issues as the state's bridge construction engineer. And so has provided terrific input on that specific issue and all of these issues, in fact. I want to mention that the truck mixed specification revision does not apply to precast elements. And really, when we think about the tunnel lining itself and all of the structural pieces within the tunnel, all of those are precast. And so those will abide by the existing specification, which requires for essentially a central mixing plant where they manufacture these precast elements. So that one, we concurred that that's an acceptable change. And then the third one is an update to the list of crude blends for gasket exposure testing. So the segments, as the tunnel lining is comprised of precast segments that are essentially bolted together, and there are gaskets placed between those segments. Those gaskets play a very important role in preventing water or limiting water from the surrounding rock to infiltrate into the tunnel. But they also, there's a double lined gasket on the segments. The inner gasket also serves a role, has to be resistant to any crude blend spill for a certain period of time so that it doesn't degrade. And so the specifications have a test requirement for chemical resistance of these gaskets to a variety of products. The current specification lists the individual products that would be transported in the pipeline, and Enbridge has informed us that the individual products are in fact combined and transported as various blends. So the requested revision includes a list of the blends that are transported rather than the individual products. The testing requirements and the criteria for chemical resistance remain the same, and therefore this revision is just an update to more accurately reflect the actual fluids that would be transported through the pipeline and that should therefore be used in testing. And so we took no exception to that modification to more accurately reflect the blends that would be transported in the pipe. So that's a summary of the three specification revisions requested. Again, the MSCA joint spec team reviewed these and concurred these revisions are acceptable. And we recommend that you consider those as acceptable as well.
Just a question on the first two. What is there any consequence to those changes that change the durability of those towers at both ends?
In terms of no, so the short answer is no. In terms of the change to the Type 1L cement, that's changed some of the detailed specs. If you look through the ARIP redlined specifications, there's some temperature changes during curing that are required, but otherwise the Type 1L cement, per work that's been done, not by this team, but by others that have adopted Type 1L cement, shows there's no change really or adverse effect on the durable life, the service life, durability over the surface life of the tunnel. In terms of the truck mixing, similarly, truck mixing would be used essentially for the walls and the slabs of the portal and the north shaft, and then all of Enbridge's own buildings, of which the joint specs don't cover. And so there's, again, according to MDOT, allows truck mix concrete on all of its projects. And so there's no evidence that the quality of the concrete is any lesser, and the testing requirements for quality are not changed in the specification. They're still the same as they are. So that quality will need to be demonstrated.
I have one question, if I may. We've discussed in prior meetings a whole host of environmental permitting obligations that Enbridge has undertaken as part of its process for preparing to construct the tunnel. Do any of those other permitting obligations, to your knowledge, feature as one of their material elements the types of crude that would be transported, or the types of liquids that would be transported? And if so, do those need to be amended or supplemented to include these specific listings of anticipated compounds?
Member Novak, I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe that would be for Ryan or for Enbridge themselves.
I think it is probably an Enbridge question. I don't know if they have a representative available to question or not.
Is anyone from Enbridge in the meeting today that can respond to that? I will say, Member Novak, my understanding is that that would be an operational issue. That would be not the purview of the construction permit. But we can follow up on that for you. I believe this is related to construction of the, again, permanent assets. But it may have a related, to your point, impact on the construction permit. Although that would be during the operations, not during construction. So we can follow up on that if that's adequate.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Could I follow up on a question? How do we manage if, in fact, during operations, they wish to change the blends that they want to use? We haven't tested those then.
Go ahead, Mike. Did you have a thought on that? Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I think that coming up as the authority accepts ownership of the tunnel and then creates a lease agreement, the lease agreement should include provisions for things like this, where if there's any deviation in product that was not tested for prior, or really any deviation in scope of use of the tunnel outside of what was designed for and constructed, then there should be language in the lease agreement requiring that in this particular question, the products are tested, the gaskets are tested against these products for chemical degradation.
Thank you.
Is Ryan's mic on? It is, okay.
Yeah, my only other thought on that, Member Novak and Member England, would be that just as the tunnel execution plan governs how the changes to the specification can be made during construction, the operations and maintenance plan and the tunnel lease agreement, to Mike's point, would govern how those changes would or would not be allowed, and how they would be presented to the MSCA. In the case of construction, it's through the terms of the current tunnel agreement, and any changes to the construction execution plan would have to be concurred with by the MSCA, material changes. And then during the operations and maintenance term, a similar approach would be kind of codified.
Any other questions? I would ask for a motion to concur with the three changes.
So I second.
All right, we have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right. Up next, staying on the subject of project specification material change, the approval procedure. Ray, you had an update on that?
Yes, we, at our June 7th meeting, the authority approved the concept of moving forward to develop a memorandum of understanding with Enbridge that would define what a material change is, better define, and would also create a writing of what the respective duties and obligations are of the parties during this process once a construction execution plan has been finalized. We're at the beginning stages of talking concepts and beginning to put pen to paper on drafting that memorandum of understanding, and we'll continue working on that.
All right, great. Any questions? All right, thank you, Ray. Ray, continuing on, the status of the MPSC contested case proceedings.
Yes, Chairman. On July 7th, the Public Service Commission issued a lengthy order that remanded the administrative proceedings back to the ALJ to develop a more complete record on several areas. The first part of the order discussed the commission wanted additional information as to why it is that the project, the replacement project, would be better designed and routed in a manner that alleviates the complication of maintaining the current dual pipelines. And that was really the first phase. The second phase was whether or not the project meets or exceeds current safety and engineering standards. And that's a prong, that one of the elements that the commission has to find in order to grant the permit. And so there were a variety of items that the commission wanted additional information on, including the feasibility of exceeding OSHA standards and designing the electrical equipment in the tunnel to a higher class than would be otherwise acceptable and under OSHA standards. They would like to have additional information on the precast tunnel and lining regarding the concrete's ability to withstand high pressure air impact if there ever was an explosion. They would like information regarding the procedure for replacement of one of these precast concrete tunnel lining. What would the process be if, in fact, there was severe cracking or acute damage from some type of fire explosion, and how the replacement procedure might affect the Line 5 pipe segment. And then a comprehensive explanation of Enbridge's leak detection system and its shutdown proceedings in the event there was a release of product. The commission listed 10 items that they would like additional information on, and the Enbridge is required to file its written testimony on remand by October 21st of this month. And then staff and the MSCA will review that testimony, and that's PSC staff and the interveners, including MSCA, will review that. Their deadline for filing any testimony is January 20th of 23. Any rebuttal testimony is due by March 3rd, and then cross-examination on that entire process, all that testimony would occur either in person or virtually during the week of April 4th through 7th.
All right, any follow-up questions for Ray?
I had raised with Ray earlier a question with respect to the identity of the party that is making submissions for the authority before the MPSC. And from my perspective, the authority itself has never formally met or convened any proceedings as it relates to the positions that were taken or the materials submitted to the MPSC proceeding. So from my perspective, the identity of the party that has submitted those things should more appropriately be characterized not as the authority itself, but the authority staff. They are the ones that have taken the positions, submitted the testimony, etc. It is a distinction that the MPSC will appreciate because they themselves frequently have their own staff that submit testimony and take positions in their proceedings, and then the commission itself will review the what has been submitted by multiple parties, including their own staff, and sometimes they'll agree with what their staff says, and sometimes they don't. And my point is to preserve our ability to agree or disagree with what has been presented. I think it's more appropriate for the intervening party to be characterized as the authority staff rather than the authority itself.
Ray, do you have a follow-up on that?
Yes, I did have this discussion with member Novak, and we are an intervener on behalf of the authority, and I certainly understand that because of our the 3-4 meetings a year, there may not be enough time to actually convene a meeting. If we did, it would have to be in closed session to discuss whether or not a particular response or testimony would be one that the authority would agree with or debate, since it would involve litigation strategy and in legal issues, that would be something that would have to be held in closed session. I don't think the authority is set up in the same way. I don't know that, I guess I'd be puzzled, and so would probably the PSC, if I think their first question might be, well, wait a minute, is this the authority's position? No, it's staff's position. Well, does staff represent the authority? So I think maybe it would be to get at member Novak's concerns, it might be better if we set up a process to review filings where possible, at least as to substantive pleadings and not stipulations or extensions of time, but a substantive testimony, because it sounds like, member Novak, your concern is that you may or may not agree necessarily with the filings that have been made. There really only has been one filing per se, and that's the testimony of Dr. Mooney and Dan Cooper, the consultants.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily whether I agree or disagree, or whether any of us agree or disagree. It's that if the authority is going to be taking litigation positions in that administrative, adjudicative context, it seems that there needs to be a process, if it's the authority itself who is taking those positions, for us to contemplate, to communicate jointly, and to make to arrive at decisions about what positions we are taking. That hasn't been done up until now, and so one method of addressing it that I suggested was, and I think what it would require is a substitution of parties to substitute the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority staff as the substituting party. But a second approach that would also work would be to create a process by which, in advance of substantive filings, made by the authority, we actually have an opportunity to convene, um, determine whether we feel comfortable with the positions taken, and then authorize them to be taken.
Well, and have a full explanation of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if my way of conveying it is exactly accurate, Ray, but I appreciate the position that we're in as an intervener, because just based on what you just explained, what's happening right now, I think it's informative for us to be in the position of an intervener. But I think Paul's suggestion, your reaction to it is an excellent one. Let's put together a process. We do it at all levels. I mean, let's think about it. We've got Dan and Mike in a position of working out subjects. They report to us. We concur. We give an official vote on it after they've explained it to us. We have our professional staff of Ryan and others who work on behalf of the authority with regards to specification issues. And we rely on their expertise. Obviously, I don't take it that there's any questioning of the professional involvement that we have. I think the suggestion is a good one. We have a responsibility as authority members to at least get the information from our experts at all levels, and then we as an authority then decide whether or not our representative moves forward with that position. I think that's a simple expectation, and so why don't we move forward? Let's make it an official motion, Paul. I like your idea of having a process in place on these type of legal subjects that as a position is being developed, that development process is presented to us and approved by the authority. Yeah.
Just let me understand this a little bit better. If the staff, who are technically more familiar with the issues, come up with a question, I would kind of like to see them be able to ask the question. The answer that they get might have to come through the board or us, but just for them to be able to ask questions, I don't quite understand. That sounds like too fine a control.
I think it's more taking a position and direction. I think that we can put in this procedure that all question and dialogue to develop the position is open for the staff to continue to work on. They do that all the time on the joint developed specifications.
That'd be fine. I just don't want to muzzle them so that
right.
they can't ask something at appropriate time and has to wait till we can have a meeting to agree we can ask the question.
No, I agree with you on that. I don't want to muzzle anyone either. We have a great staff that's working on our behalf. But to take an official position in a legal proceeding, I think, is the simple request that Paul is making.
Sure. Yep.
That be reported to us, and we just concur, or we, like Paul said, we may not. We may have questions that change the position slightly. Or in the furthest possibility, we decide to tell the staff to stand down on some subject. But I agree with you. Let's make this procedure as flexible as possible for the process to keep moving forward. But until we take an official position, we would then concur with that position before it is acted on. Does that sound accurate?
It does. I think for purposes of, we are an ongoing intervener right now in the MPSC. That's the only forum I am aware of where this is an issue. There is going litigation or anything else where this is an issue. In the context of, and you just laid out the upcoming schedule, which I think does not contemplate, if I remember you going through the dates, the submission of any additional positions, if any, by the authority until it's what, a response date to the next filing of Enbridge?
Correct. Enbridge is filing due October 21st, and then the MSCA, along with the PSC staff and all the other interveners, their deadline for filing any additional testimony on the subjects identified in the July 7th order is January 20th of 23.
Okay. So if we were, just playing this out, if we were to submit something on that January 23rd deadline, I think the process that I'm suggesting would contemplate that we have a meeting in advance of January 23rd, where whatever position it is contemplated that we are taking as of January 23rd is discussed and a decision made as to whether that's indeed what the authority would be presenting.
At this point, Ray, are we anticipating taking any positions in that filing?
We don't know yet until we see what Enbridge files.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Why don't we make a motion then to put that process in place, Paul?
Yeah, I'll move that.
We have a motion and support to put a procedure in place on official positions of the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority and legal proceedings. With that motion, I'll put it to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, Ray. Up next, contractor selection status update. Ryan?
Thank you, Chairman Nystrom. So Chairman, members, last time we met, I gave a brief update. This will be a similarly brief update, just to let you know what's transpiring related to contractor selection for the tunnel construction. In March of 22, as I reported at the last meeting, Enbridge issued an RFP to select a construction contractor to build the tunnel. Since then, technical review meetings, including site visits with the proponents, have been completed, and they've been completed with all proponents that are still interested. Proposals from contractors are anticipated later this year, and of course thereafter, if Enbridge is satisfied with a proponent, they will select a contractor.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, in watching how this process went on, how did the stability of the markets and everything influence? Is that why some backed out, or is the ones who are still in are confident that they know how to bid in this environment?
Well, I think, Member England, it's a difficult question to answer. I have a frequent contact with the construction market in Michigan related to road building. This is a different market. What I would say is that every contractor has a different appetite for risk. Every contractor has a different approach to how they're going to deliver a given project. So I would say the market may or may not have influenced decisions to pursue or not to pursue this project. And I've not been involved in discussions with contractors. Much of that is kind of in a confidential setting, but I will say with the construction being still, conceivably several years off, it will be a different market that is actually.
What I guess I was really asking is, once they put in a proposal, are they bound to follow through if they're chosen?
I mean, yes, there are requirements, and in fact, in the tunnel agreement, there are strict requirements that would be that would flow down to the contractor related to completion dates. So yes, any contractor that was selected would be bound partially by the tunnel agreement terms between the authority and Enbridge, but also the construction contract would govern that as well. And they would commit to a schedule. They would commit to a firm fixed price for delivery of the project, but there may be clauses and terms and conditions that would allow for relief in certain events.
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess I would add to that, Tony, and Ryan, you can expand upon it. I think that I know that the companies that are looking at this project are very sophisticated, very experienced, very knowledgeable. They anticipate cost increases. They see them on every project that they're looking at. And so they aren't going into this looking at the concrete prices today. They're forecasting with huge experts that are knowledgeable in the industry. They have folks working for them that are highly educated, highly experienced, and so I would anticipate anyone that's still in the game knows what they're looking at a few years down the road, because any of these type of projects are long-term projects. None of them happen overnight, and they're years to complete. So I would say that I anticipate those that are still in the game, those that are out of the game, maybe just got other work. They may have gotten other huge tunnel projects in other parts of the world, and so they've made the corporate decision to move on from this project simply because of capacity.
Sure.
So I see where you're coming from, and it's a great question. But I doubt that there are folks out there just choosing to pull away from it because of the cost escalations that we've seen. The CPI of the construction industry isn't scaring people away. They're experienced to know how to deal with that for sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I will say, member England, that if you want a large quantity of cement, steel, concrete, asphalt,
Yes.
I can hold a bid for about 7 days right now. So
Yeah, well, good. I'm redoing our kitchen, and we can't even be sure we can get new appliances.
Yeah.
so you sympathize with MDOT's
Yes.
market-related woes, cost escalation, and supply chain disruptions. Thank you, sir.
Ryan, you're still up on the NEPA status?
Yes. So similarly, I have a brief update. Last meeting, I updated you all on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers notice of intent to prepare an EIS. That was in August. Since then, the EIS process has continued and is continuing to move forward. Public comment period for the project scoping is currently underway. You may have seen online opportunities to comment in some of the dialogue related to that. Enbridge has continued to participate in the EIS with the third-party contractor and also responding to data requests from the Corps, and then moving forward to work to support that permit review process.
Questions, Ryan?
Do you have an anticipated timeline as to how that process will continue?
I don't have what I would call an accurate or reliable timeline. It has long been said and is generally estimated to be a 2-year process, which was initiated again in August.
All right. Up next, we have a letter in our packets from Member Novak disclosing some potential conflicts that he has disclosed. And so with that, I'd let Paul just discuss that letter for a moment. And
Yeah, the last meeting I attended, there were representatives from different counties who spoke during the public comment portion of the proceedings regarding Line 5 and the construction of this project. It dawned on me as they were doing so that in an entirely different context, I represent some of those counties. And I thought it appropriate, even though I don't think there is anything that arises to the level of a conflict under the Michigan statutes that govern our participation on authorities like this, that I should at least disclose it so that as a matter of record, if someone comes up from whatever county and speaks, I have at least disclosed to both of you that they may be a client of mine in the entirely different context that we have. My firm and I personally am involved in national opioids litigation against various manufacturers, wholesalers, and dispensers of opioids on behalf of a number of local governments in Michigan, including some of those entities. And in that very distinct context, they are my clients.
Thank you for doing that, Paul. In reading through this, I guess, and thinking about the same thing that you did, I don't believe that, I think some have come in and when they gave their public comment, they said they happened to be a member of a certain commission, but they were speaking as an individual of that commission. But I do appreciate this. In your letter, you're asking for Ray to look into the question of conflict. I guess I would say, in reading this and believing what you want to do, I don't believe your request is to do a deep dive on each county listed here or each municipality listed. It's the question of that representation having a conflict in any way with what we're trying to do as an authority. That's the broader question, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. And you as a firm and as an individual counselor, you do a conflict check on your own within your firm as well, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ray, I think that gives you the concept here of what Member Novak is asking is really just in his representation of these municipalities and whatnot, the counties listed. Is there a conflict in what he is doing as the opioid litigation with what we are doing here? I think that's really the simple question.
Yes, and I looked into it. The authority members under Public Act 359 are subject to two public acts, 1968-317 and 1968-318. 317 deals with contracts of public servants with public entities, and that's really addressing that a public servant shall not be a party directly or indirectly to any contract between himself and the public entity at which he's an officer. So that's not a situation here. There's no potential for pecuniary gain or financial gain. At the second statute that the members are subject to is a conflict of interest that prohibits a state office from being interested directly or indirectly in any contract with the state. And again, that deals more with this idea that you can't use your position for your own personal gain. There's no nexus between representing these counties in an opioid lawsuit. Mr. Novak is not acting as an attorney for the board. So the real answer is, and Mr. Novak's done that with their conflict check, is to determine whether or not any of his clients would perceive a conflict of interest by his member, and that would be beyond the scope of any legal advice I could give to members of the authority.
All right, I think that satisfies it. Thank you for doing that, Paul.
Sure.
So that ends our new business. The only other thing that came to my mind as I was preparing for the meeting is last year we ran into this same situation. Our contracts with our professional consultants, Dan and Mike and Ray, come up at the end of the year. We don't have our meeting until February, and so we have this period where there's an open-ended period of them consulting for us without a contract. I might make the suggestion here, and it's open for question and conversation, of just approving their contracts again, unless there are significant changes at the current contract, If there are inflationary increases that are proposed, I don't know, Ryan, in those contracts with the two professionals. But on Ray's specifically, really his, any changes to his contract are officially approved by the Attorney General's office. So it is us just approving that we want Ray to continue on with us under contract. He would be representing us for a month and a half out of contract. Mike and Dan would be continuing to represent us on joint specifications and other items outside of a contract if we were not to approve them going forward. But if there are questions about any of the contract or the necessity of them, I'm open to that. I thought of it coming into this meeting that we had that situation last year and had to retroactively approve contracts.
It would be nice if we could do it on time. It felt awkward the way we did it last year, but I'm sure that we wouldn't know what appropriate.
Well, Ryan can discuss Mike and Dan's, and then Ray can discuss his for a moment.
Sure. So HD Engineering, Dan Cooper's contract was extended and carries us through the year, and so does Mike Mooney's. So those are okay.
Through the end of this year?
No, they are extended beyond that. Yes.
Good. Okay, good.
So the contract, a special assistant attorney general contract, which is through the Department of Attorney General, as you said, they are 1-year contracts, and they are intentionally limited in budget and time. So Ray's contract will expire at the end of the year. So I'd like to extend that if we possibly could today. It would be the same services, and we don't want a gap in services. So would suggest that we extend Ray's contract. Regarding budget, as I mentioned, there is a cap currently of the ceiling is $75,000. I would suggest we just similarly increase it as it has been increased previously. Another $50,000, which is what we did last time, which would bring the ceiling to $125,000. And then to your point about the rate, it was previously $125. I would suggest, just as you said, a kind of an inflationary adjustment or a cost of living adjustment to $150. If it's if you all would agree that that's reasonable. And to your point, so we don't have to be without that service. It sounds like there may be a meeting coming for another matter, which is altogether a different issue. But if the authority would agree, we could extend that. And then once again, to your point, Chairman, it would be subject to approval of the AG, of course, because it's a contract with the AG.
It's a contract with the AG. So
correct.
It's paid for out of their
No.
or out of our budget.
The only dollars that can, the only state dollars by law that can participate in any aspect of the project are the Straits Protection Fund dollars, and those pay for my staff, state staff, myself and the other MDOT staff that are involved in the project, and our consultant work. But MDOT is the custodian of that fund, but the AG holds the contract. We pay for it. It's their contract.
I would like to do it.
Okay.
Like a motion that we issue contract for Ray, parameters that Ryan laid out.
Was the last go around, was the contract approved by the AG's office before or after the authority voted on it, if you know?
Ray, I believe it was approved after you had gotten approval from the AG, but you had worked for a period of time without any contract before we approved it.
That's correct. Just one clarification. The Attorney General is charged with representing any state agents, commissions, bureaus.
Yes.
And so as a result,
It's called the Frank Kelly rule. Go ahead.
Okay, the Frank Kelly rule. And so any SAG contract, Special Assistant Attorney General contract, is initiated by the Attorney General because the Attorney General appoints a person to be her designee in this case. So the legal services contract is signed by the authority using authority funds and is along with the Attorney General. However, if there were any inflationary increases, then ultimately the Attorney General is a signatory to the contract as well as the authority.
Sure.
And so does that explain it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So what we're doing is making a recommendation.
If I can propose maybe a modification, Tony, to what you suggested, it would be to a motion to authorize Ray's continued performance under his existing contract up through the time of our next meeting, when we would contemplate a written contract would be submitted with whatever escalation provisions in it. And that would be an agenda item that would have the actual document, and we could approve it at that point.
If I may, Paul, make a further suggestion. I agree with Tony's potential motion to, we don't have to necessarily agree to any numbers. What I would say I would like to support is the concept of extending our legal representation with Ray through the AG's office based on what the AG approves. Then it's reported back to us. It's reported back to us. If they approve the $50,000 increase, if they approve the inflationary increase in the rate, we then are reported about it at our February meeting, but then we don't have that gap.
Yep, no, I like that.
Okay, all right, does staff understand that?
Yes.
Okay, Tony, you've made the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and support on continuing Ray's representation for the MSCA. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, and with that, is there any other business?
One question and the follow-up. So to the extent that a written contract is presented and is awaiting authority approval, would the chair or how would that get signed, or would we be saying it can't get signed until our next meeting?
I guess we just gave approval based on what you negotiate with the AG. So in order to initiate the contract beginning January 1, I would be given authority based on your motion. Are you agreeing to that?
Yes.
To sign it.
Okay.
And then you would report on it to us at the February meeting, right?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Did you have any other business?
Well, circling back to the discussion we had about the MPSC proceeding, if indeed the staff receives whatever the submission made by Enbridge and proposes that we file something in response to that, along the lines of what we've been discussing, it may require us to have a meeting in advance of February.
Correct. I think that's what Ryan was alluding to. There's
Yeah.
a potential.
So I'll just leave that as an observation for now. You guys will see what is submitted in the proceeding, have an initial reaction as to whether some filing would be appropriate for the authority. And if you conclude, or in consultation with the chair, I guess, that a filing would be appropriate, then I think we're looking probably at a January meeting.
There is that potential, yes. Now, to clarify, because we do have folks here, we have folks online. Ray, because we're talking about legal proceedings, would that be a open meeting or a closed meeting?
Well, we'd have to have an open meeting. We'd have to convene in an open meeting and then go into closed session to discuss.
I just wanted it complete transparency
Yes.
on how that process
Yes,
would work.
we'd still have to post for the meeting.
Yep.
So, if I may, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the direction. I understood that the authority requested a procedure for handling these situations in the future, and we'll take that away and prepare that. But to your point, importantly, if the Enbridge filing that's due October 21 is understood to require a response from the intervener, the MSCA as intervener, we would not only meet to discuss the suggested position of staff, but also have that procedure in place to discuss.
I guess, Ryan, and I'll speak for myself, I don't want to speak for the other members, but I think we laid out the procedure in our discussion.
Okay, it's as simple as just to meet in order to ensure that the suggested position was agreeable to the members.
We've laid out a position.
And allow you all an opportunity to discuss and then agree, disagree, take a position. Okay.
And Ray and any other staff, if you were involved in it in any way, ask questions, develop our position, and bring that back to us before it is acted upon.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All right, and with that, we would open up for public comment. We appreciate the comments from the public. We have, again, received 2 written comments prior to our meeting, and those will be posted on our public site. But we now open up the meeting to any public comments. Each member of the public is limited to 3 minutes. We don't have a big crowd here, but happy to hear from you. Anyone?
Well, good morning, authority members. My name is Sean McBurdy with Oil and Water Don't Mix and Clean Water Action. And today, I just wanted to flag for you all a recent filing that you ought to read from the environmental impact statement scoping comments. The EPA shared their comments to the scoping process with Army Corps last Friday. And all over, they're definitely things I think this authority should be paying attention to, but a couple specific things I wanted to flag. First of all, that EPA goes into some detail about the 2020 Depreciation Report with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that Enbridge filed in May of 2021. And the fact that this recent depreciation report has reduced the Lakehead pipeline system's remaining lifespan to 20 years. The report points to several reasons the company believes the line will not be viable within 2 decades: competition from other pipelines, climate change policies that call for the reduction of carbon emissions in the U.S. and Canada, and other causes as well. So the company has stated to FERC that they think the Lakehead system will no longer be viable within 20 years. On top of that, the EPA raised concerns, and I'm just trying to find it here, about the financial assurances offered by Enbridge in this process. And especially if we're thinking about the state of Michigan, through you, playing a role in building this pipeline, which wouldn't be operational until at least 2030 and would be obsolete 10 years later. We're talking about a big stranded asset that the state would have to care for a long time. If the state would indeed be the owner and having leased it to Enbridge, which says it'll be about 10 years after this is built that they can't have it anymore. So the financial assurances that Enbridge has granted, or that Enbridge has agreed to with the state of Michigan, have been shown to be in a 2019 expert report released by Attorney General Nessel's office. The American Risk Management Resources Network concluded that Enbridge, Inc. is not subject to the indemnity language under the 1953 easement and is not responsible for liabilities incurred by its subsidiaries. So after that, in 2020, the DNR sent a letter to Enbridge requesting that the corporation enter into a written agreement with the state to provide financial assurances to cover all damages and losses caused to property or individuals due to operation or failure of the Line 5 dual pipelines through the Straits, and no action so far has been taken by Enbridge to resolve this matter. So as of right now, the state is apparently on the hook, and our taxpayers are on the hook should there be an oil spill in the Straits of Mackinac. There's nothing that's been filed to change that, and Enbridge is not planning on operating this pipeline for as long as they claim in lease agreements on the record with FERC. These are things that the authority really ought to be looking into as far as how the state can be held harmless throughout this process, from the potential for an oil spill into the Great Lakes or into a tunnel beneath the Great Lakes. So I'd encourage you again to read the EPA comments to the Army Corps on the scope of their review and take those into consideration with your oversight role. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The filing that you made reference to, where all of the details that you just conveyed, that was all included within the EPA filing in the EIS statement process?
Yes, it's on the website for the Army Corps EIS.
So they made reference to the underlying depreciation schedules that were a matter of the FERC proceeding?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, and with that, we would call for an adjournment of the October 12th meeting.
So move.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you all.